I had drawn up this fairly aggressive piece for Vail, and I remember Mr. Bluffney said, "Young man, we are known for cute and Bavarian here. I'd like you to take this back to your drawing table and make it more cute and more Bavarian."
Hi. Hello.
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 Hello and welcome to Architecting.
Hi, welcome to Architecting. I'm Rebecca Wagner here with the host of Architecting, Adam. Hey, Adam, who's on the podcast today?
Hey, today we have J Meade. I'm not going to do the guessing. It's just a charade anyway. You already know who's on. But yeah, so today we have J Meade from Arc 11, the founder of Arc 11. EJ is an architect that I look up to, and I think he's really interesting from a point of view of a strong thinker and creator that really came about from his background that we got into, where he majored in philosophy, but then went right to being a carpenter and building a house with a how-to carpentry book next to him. But yeah, we get into how he co-founded and started up Arc 11, and then the work that they're doing now, and how he's built up this firm and these ideas around the firm.
Where does the name Arc 11 come from?
You just have to listen.
Ooh, foreshadowing.
It's a good one. Yeah, so we had a good interview and got into a lot of things, and then I threw in a bonus segment. So the bonus segment is where I used to end an interview, and then I would hang up with that person, and then I would call them on the phone and have a conversation about how the interview went. And I found that those interviews, those talks, were sometimes more fun than the actual interview. And so I just started recording those. And so that's what the bonus is, where it's just kind of us talking about a lot of things. So there's a lot, especially in this one, there's a lot put into there, talking about getting used to being fired, or longevity of an architect's career, or reckless deans. We get in a lot about Douglas Darden and his influence. This is really fantastic architect and unreasonable architect. But anyway, it's fun. Lots of stuff.
Don't give it all away. Sounds fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Hope you enjoy.
Many of our listeners are familiar with Herman Miller, a 100-plus-year-old company known for its rich legacy in modern designs, ergonomics, and thought leadership. For Colorado, Workplace Resource is the certified platinum dealership representing Herman Miller, and we are proud to support the Colorado design community. Whether you are in the market for a functional and stylish home office setup or exploring a broader solution to outfit your entire workplace, we are the partner you can trust. The local teams with Herman Miller and Workplace Resource can connect you with research and insights, create a high-performing work environment, especially in this current shift with the way we work. We encourage you to explore our Future of Work Hub for more information, and the link is in the bio. Conceptual thought starters. Not sure what type of solution works best? Browse our planning ideas to start the conversation. You can download Revit files and full tools to really help dial in your solution for your floor plan. And lastly, full project design, specification, and installation for small businesses to full campuses. Workplace Resource is really the place to begin. Be sure to connect with our team. We look forward to supporting our design partners in the Colorado community. And in the meantime, please enjoy Architecting.
Hey, we're happy to be sponsored by Modern in Denver Magazine. For over a decade, they've been crafting fantastically curated content on Colorado designers and projects, spreading the gospel of good design within our region.
And I love how the goal of Modern in Denver aligns with the goal of this podcast, to better build up and connect the community of Colorado designers. So go buy a copy of the magazine at your local bookstand, subscribe to their weekly email list, and follow them on Instagram.
Check it out. That's a sweet background you got there.
Yeah,
Where are you
this is the new house. There's a whole story behind that. So
yeah,
I am sure we can weave it in at some point in our conversation.
Nice. Where are you at? Is that a Boulder house? Or?
Yeah. I came out to Boulder 1984. Well, it was supposed to be a 2-week vacation. before going to grad school in Boston, and here I stayed.
It just grabbed you, just Boulder.
Yeah.
Sucked you in and didn't spit you out. Nice.
Yeah, it could have been worse. I mean, my 1969 Volvo wagon with the 200 and some thousand miles could have broken down in Iowa and I'd still be there.
Yeah. At that point, I'd hope you'd like figure out a way to fix that car and get out of Iowa. But
Exactly.
I'm from Kansas. I have this weird like rivalry with Iowa. You know, like the best of the worst or something, or the middle, but.
Well, you know, I kind of joke about it, but on that ride out, this was after the 2-week vacation, I decided to go back home and grab my tools and a few $100 in cash I had, and I'm driving out, and I actually stopped in Grinnell, Iowa, and it was just I had a great night. I got to see the Louis Sullivan Bank there.
Oh, yeah.
Iowa, you know, for a kid from urban New Jersey, Iowa gave me a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. Okay. So New Jersey. So first off, we have to make you do this question. Everybody has to answer. Who are you? Who's J Meade?
I'm asking myself that every day.
Yeah. Nice.
That's a good question. Who am I? Kid from urban New Jersey. Craftsperson, thinker, teacher,
Nice.
Father, partner.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that all started in New Jersey?
Life actually started in Boston. Most of the maturity happened looking out my window at the New York skyline from the New Jersey side of the world. Yeah. I heard your interview with Harry Teague, and interestingly enough, his grandfather drew a utopian vision of my hometown's urban business district, making it into a utopian Art Deco. That it was never realized, but he did.
Really? Yeah. Huh. It wasn't one of those like Buckminster Fuller like glass dome utopias, but more of a kind of strange Art Deco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That pure deco.
Yeah. Huh.
I think it was probably pre World War II that he did that. So.
Yeah. Man, that was interesting. Just that whole background we got into with Harry.
Oh,
just
yeah.
That lineage of designers that he grew up in.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. My business partner, James Truitt, he worked for Harry for a while. So Harry actually put us together at one point and said, I think you guys should start a firm. So we always kind of see him as our godfather.
Huh. Nice.
Yeah.
So did you have that same sort of design lineage growing up? What did your parents do? Yeah.
No, I'm from a family of educators. So, but that allowed me my first exposures to architecture. I think I was 8 or 9 years old, and my father had this opportunity to speak at the opening of the Bennington, Vermont new high school in Bennington, Vermont. And my first airplane ride, we flew from Boston, this little plane, and then got picked up at the airport by this older guy and a young girl my age in an old 1920s era touring car. And I sat in the back next to this little girl, and we went to the opening of the high school where my father was supposed to give a speech. We're walking up the hallway, and my father introduces me to Ben Thompson, who had come out of the Architects Collaborative in Cambridge in the 50s and 60s. And he had left that, and this was his first building. And my father said, "Oh, this is the architect." And I said, "Well, what's the architect?" And he said, "Well, this is the man who draws the buildings." And up until then, I had just been drawing very complex sections of spaceships because it was the 60s and space race. And I was like, "Architect? Wow, you get to draw the buildings?" So that was my first spark there into it could be something to pursue.
How old were you there?
I was about
that
8.
revelation? 8?
Yeah.
That's nice and early.
Yeah.
What kind of education were your parents into?
I'm sorry?
What did they teach? What was the education that
my mother was a business ed teacher. My father, they met teaching. My father had been a geography teacher, but then later in life, he became a program officer at the Ford Foundation.
Huh.
So he remained in urban education, kind of on a global scale.
So did that spark kind of, was it, I mean, obviously it was memorable for you, but did it go off and then it just kind of kept, the flame kept going? Or was it was that a thing where you said, okay, I want to be an architect, and you kind of kept moving towards that? Or was it like you remembered it again when you were applying to colleges? And
yeah, I think that my childhood gave me these moments of it. So my father, the Ford Foundation building was a Kevin Roach building.
Yeah.
Just fantastic. So again, part of my memory there is just grinding Ford Foundation pencils in the electric erasers, and looking at the IBM Selectric and just the impeccable interiors of that place. But then as I grew older, like, oh, this is, it's a pretty cool space, and the whole idea of having a philanthropic foundation that most of the space of the building is given over to a public gardens. It was pretty interesting that it was idea and building combined. He later, to the college thing, no, I applied to one environmental design program when I was applying to schools, and I got in, but I thought, oh my God, I'm only 18 years old. That's way too early to make an important decision about one's profession. So I went off and got a liberal arts degree with majors in philosophy and American studies.
Huh. That's like what the real architects do. Get a philosophy degree first, and then they become the architects. Yeah, with that. Yeah. The real thinkers.
Yeah, it set me up pretty well. I came out of school, and philosophy degree is perfect to become a carpenter. So I spent some time around New England and the New York area building for far too long before returning to graduate school.
Huh. Was that was a real conscious choice? I mean, obviously there's not much to do.
It was a reaction to some of life circumstances. I got out of school. My mother was ill. I came home to take care of her and her parents, and spent about a year doing that, applied to grad schools. And then this dear friend of mine was finishing up his master's in geophysics at Mines. He said, well, why don't you come out here for a couple-week vacation? And I came out, and that was it. Sky's pretty blue. I was a rock climber. Seemed like a good way to spend a year.
Yeah.
37 years later, still here.
A few years. That's the good thing about carpentry, right? It's needed everywhere. Yeah. So what kind of carpentry were you doing?
Well, in New England, so it's kind of interesting. The first house I built was with my college roommate, and it was little salt box solar in the woods of New Hampshire. We did it for this woman who was a retiring writer from New York City, and we used no plywood in the house. Everything was boards. House had completely 100% heated itself with the sun. And I look back on that now, I'm like, yeah, it was LEED platinum and probably a passive house. Yeah. But I was 20 years old or 21 years old then. And I thought, oh, if I go into architecture, this is just what I'll do. Everything will be like this. It was kind of completely green. And so it wasn't, there was probably 10 years between that house and my actually starting to practice architecture. And I realized by the time I got there, the field was a little different than I anticipated.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you know how to build that house? And, was that your partner, or did you guys just get a magazine?
Growing up, my grandfather was a carpenter, so I'd spend some time working with him. We built a house addition for my parents together. We fixed some barns together. And so I had some rudimentary skills, and that was summers during college. I would do that. It was funny though, that one of the first things or the second thing my partner and I built, we had a little how-to carpentry book out on the job site. You know, we were doing an addition to this New Hampshire farmhouse, and the owner came out and he saw the book sitting there on a log stump. He said, "Oh, that's pretty funny. You guys are just here pulling my leg, right?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, good joke, huh?" Yeah.
I know. I think I have. Someone gave me like a book from the 70s. It was like design your own solar home or something. You know?
Yeah.
It was like fantastic. You know, plan a section. You know, tells you how to set the orientation, and yeah, it seemed like such a kind of movement at that time, and that seemed like would catch on, and then kind of unfulfilled promise in a way. I feel like.
Yeah, it was kind of the green dream.
Yeah.
That you know, the interesting thing is that, you know, in the last 10 years, it's become real again with a much better layer of technology attached to it, and tools for measuring it and certifying it. So that's been, you know, in some ways it feels a little bit full circle for me, but I finally got there. It just took a while.
Yeah, it took a while. So you were in Colorado, and then you started applying to grad schools again, and you knew that's kind of what you wanted to do, or what?
Yeah, my introduction to college. So my father did a summer working at the Aspen Institute, brought us all out here as a teenager, and you know, saw that we were on the Institute campus, staying in those Bayer dormitories, and the Bucky Fuller Dome was over the swimming pool at that time. This is long before Harry Teague, you know, built the music hall and things. And it was just, you know, this kind of really rich atmosphere. I thought, you know, as a kid, I was 13 or 14. I was like, yeah, I'm going to move to Colorado and own a Jeep. So by the time I got here, I'd been here about a year, hit myself in the head with a big piece of wood and thought, yeah, it's time to go back to graduate school. So reapplied. Actually, I didn't reapply. I had taken a year off, and the University of Washington was still allowed me to pick up my deferred admission. So my then girlfriend, later wife, and I moved to Seattle for a bit.
So why Washington? What about that program?
You know, Seattle seemed like an interesting place at the time. It seemed like a good program in that I had been reading Kenneth Frampton's essay on critical regionalism, and the new dean there was kind of tapped into that. There was a semester, or not semester, it was a summer at the GSD between Carpentry and Boulder that kind of turned me on to the formality of architecture, which is good for any carpenter to learn that there's a very big difference between building and architecture.
Yeah.
You know, so I had taken, you know, I got some really keen readings out of that summer there. But anyway, that's, you know, and that was also a place that my then girlfriend said, well, I don't want to ever go back to the East Coast, so let's go to the West Coast.
And so was that from philosophy to carpentry to GSD for a second, then to Washington? Did that program sort of fulfill those things you were looking for, or that kind of path, or was it a kind of a shock in some way?
It fulfilled some of it. I will say that the GSD spoils anyone. So, you know, I'm sure you go, you know, okay, maybe not Yale.
No.
And my partner would say, maybe not Rice. But
maybe not Rice, yeah. You too.
But no, it did spoil me in a way that, you know, there was some really great thinkers and a large number of them. And I got to Seattle, and I really hit it off with the dean, a guy named Doug Kelbaugh, who was there. But it was a little disappointing, and so had some personal stuff happen. My mom passed away. My girlfriend left me. I'm like, yeah, this is maybe time to leave school for a while. And all of a sudden, my girlfriend called me back and said, I think we should get married and move back to Boulder.
Oh, okay.
So we did that. It was a very romantic proposal over the phone.
You since she threw in Colorado, you said, okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So how many years did you spend? How many semesters did you do at Washington then?
I was there for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then you were going to continue it here in Boulder
I came back to
CU?
Boulder, and at that point, the graduate program was Denver based,
Oh, really?
and I thought, well, I came back to Boulder and just fell back into my carpentry habit because I needed to earn a living, and then I thought, yeah, I got to go back to school, and so I dropped into the Denver program for the last 3 semesters or so, 4 semesters of my degree.
And so was it a sort of good continuation of the Washington sort of philosophy or direction?
It was.
Is there a connection there?
It was. I had enough of, I think, an internal direction that I felt self-directed, and I found what I needed. And I found there was some really good people I worked with at Denver. Ned Collier was one. He worked for George Hoover for a while. He teaches at the GSD now. Doug Darden, I was fortunate enough to work with for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
You
what was he like? I mean, he's sort of such a mythical figure in a way with his drawings
figure.
And then his unfortunate
all too brief
passing.
life.
But yeah.
No, Douglas and I got very close. He was. I was talking to someone else about him the other day. I was talking about what makes architecture. I was being interviewed by some people who have a gaming business, and we were talking about the architecture of the game and what makes real architecture. And I said, I worked with Doug Darden on several of his theoretical projects, and Douglas was convinced that the drawings were the architecture. They didn't need to be tested in the building because the way he drew it was the architecture. So, no, Douglas was a great spark. He was supportive. Sometimes it was his way or no way, and I think sometimes in education, you surrender yourself to that, to test the waters. I had George Hoover for a studio. I did the same with George and surrendered myself to his diagramming, and you get a lot out of that. You may not agree with it. It may be hard at times.
Yeah. But I think that's so interesting in school, right? Of just letting yourself go sometimes and seeing what happens and learning from it and moving on. But
and I think I still philosophically carried enough, inertia from what I wanted to get out of it that I could infuse that and take pieces along the way. So,
did a lot of that come from your undergrad, from your philosophy degree? Like, were you able to sort of? Did it help you elevate your architecture in school?
I think absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I think being able to draw from a kind of a broad education and especially the philosophy piece where you're looking at a conceptual framework, either for an ontological framework or and I think architecture is sort of similar to that. We try to do idea-based projects. So what builds the ontological framework of the project so that you can actually make design decisions rather than something that's sort of based stylistically.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so what did you do with all that? So you have all this experience. You let yourself go with some professors. You graduate. What's next?
I graduated and I had picked up a couple of little residential projects. I've been in Boulder long enough that you're done with architecture school now. Well, can you do this or that? And so I took those on, and I got a teaching position at Boulder. I taught the final senior studio there for about 12 years.
Oh wow!
So I just started getting a handful of little projects. I got too busy. The first project I did was a house in Vail. I don't tell anyone where it is. What do they say? Doctors bury their mistakes or something. Architects take detours around them.
Take detours. I love that.
Yeah. It's actually not a bad house today, but it's kind of funny, they had a design review board up there, and the head of the design review board was a guy named Ned Gwathmey, who was Charles Gwathmey's cousin.
Really?
Yeah. So, you think he'd be pretty informed. And I came out of graduate school, right in the, before I went to graduate school, I saw the deconstructivist exhibit at MoMA, and that kind of,
oh, really?
That said a lot. So, you're looking at Morphosis-like work and these Russian constructivists-like. So I had drawn up this fairly aggressive piece for Vail, and I remember Mr. Gwathmey said, "Young man, we are known for cute and Bavarian here. I'd like you to take this back to your drawing table and make it more cute and more Bavarian." So,
that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. Before we went in front of that board, we would always have to ask ourselves, like, does this yodel enough?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that, the tenor, that was, 35 years ago or so. So the tenor of things has changed a bit.
Yeah.
30 years ago. But no, it was great to teach. I shared an office with Anthony Pilecchia, who had a firm in Denver for quite some time. He came out of Kahn's office, and he was this rough and tumble guy from Philadelphia who I was just starting the practice, and he was closing his in Denver to move to Seattle. He wanted to just have a little, 2-person boutique. And I remember he'd always give me little, tidbits of advice. The one that stuck the most was maybe, you've got to draw every fucking screw and nail.
That's funny.
Yeah, but that was a good lesson. I mean, you really do have to think through, and I've built that into the ethic of the practice. That we really, and maybe it's partially that making background of carpentry, but really thinking through and making sure that what we put out there is that complete.
Yeah. But was that the idea? So you graduated, you got a house. Were you saying, okay, I'm gonna start my own firm. It's gonna be 20 people. It's gonna blah blah blah. Like, or was it sort of one thing at a time? And
I am not someone who has planned their life. I think I'm someone who has had enough skills that I can react well to the circumstances and choices that I'm given. So I started getting. I thought, oh, this is kind of fun. We're doing these things. And then I got busy. So I tapped James Truitt, who was teaching furniture design at the university, to help me on a project. And then we got a few more projects. And then all of a sudden, someone came to us with a commercial project. And, we're like, ooh, we don't have a license. So we got a third partner who was licensed at the time to do that project. And he was with us for a while. And it just sort of grew organically. We started out working in the second bedroom of my duplex in downtown Boulder, and then we rented a space that about 12 of us could fit in for $200 a month, above a Porsche mechanic. The downside of that was you go home kind of smelling like exhaust in your clothing and brake cleaning fluid. So we were in that space for quite some time. So no, it wasn't really a planned event. It was a reaction to circumstance, and as we got more and more projects, and all three of us were teaching. We could pluck the right students, and it was really a lot of fun. You asked what I think one of your questions was what were some of the more difficult times? Yeah. Well, I will say for the first 3 years of the firm, the highest paid people were the interns. And so we were lucky. We had patient lives, and we had a little bit of, teaching money from the university. And frankly, Colorado wasn't building then, never mind building interesting, thoughtful, forward-looking architecture.
Yeah. So was that, but it was enough. You had enough momentum and enough passion and enjoyment for it that those 3 years was, you obviously made it through, but
foolhardiness will get you a long ways in this world sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like teaching helps with that too. Where you're able to sort of tap into students, their energy and their excitement, and I think 3 years of having a barely successful firm, I think I'm in it now. It is can get you down, right? But having that sort of other outlet to tap into is nice.
Yeah, no, the teaching was good. Really, it's energizing, and it's a place where you test your ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you test your conviction to your ideas.
Yeah. Are you able to articulate those ideas? What you believe in architecture?
Yeah, I think so. I think we see, I see architecture as being a lens, right? A descriptor, a way to reveal place and program, right? Respond in the way it responds to those things. So yeah, I think, that's, if I would tap back into my philosophy background, Heidegger says that technology is a way of revealing the natural, right? So you don't understand the distance between the banks of the river till the bridge goes in place that measures it. Right? You don't understand the slope of the hill until you see the level line against it. So I think using architecture as a way, the descriptor of place, whether it's revealing the steepness of a hill, or how the sun is going to pass over the sky, or how the seasons change. It's kind of the ethic we take to things. And the same with program. How can you reveal how the house or how the office building or restaurant might work? And sometimes you have to do that by changing one's expectations about it, or inverting one's expectations about it.
What's a project that's really succeeded with that for you guys? You think
that really
has succeeded with that theory, with that capturing that idea of lens the best?
I think we did I think there's several that do that in different ways. We did a house here on 6th Street in which we really inverted public and private, the notions of public and private. And part of it is, we're working in an environment where everyone wants to see these views, right? And part of it is the notion of privacy in the digital age is so eroded. So we played with it in that house where there's some, from the street, you can look through and see everything that goes on in the house. And we've placed what are very private spaces, like the shower off the primary suite. At the top of the stairs, there's a glass wall. So you have this sort of voyeuristic quality to things. I think a lot of that revealing too happens in how contrasting. We did a little project in Ohio, which was an addition and renovation of a very old building, in which we contrasted with new technologies, and did a very similar thing. There's some revealing of what might be private spaces in public areas. So, I like to do the unexpected for people. I think it's good for, sometimes it stops people and, just maybe you get a glimpse of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. What was that? What was the house called?
The house is called the 6th Street House.
6th Street House.
Yeah. I think also we've had the same. We have a house called the Sincline House. We did a very similar thing that responded to the topography and the geology of the area. So the fold in the land where the front range kind of lifts from the plains, and how the house actually reveals that at different, foreground, midground, and the long views. And I think we couple that with, I have this real obsessive idea about well-crafting things. And that doesn't mean that they want to look necessarily crafty. They just want to be really beautifully made.
Yeah, I think when I was writing down some notes and looking at your guys' work, I was writing down, thinking about framing and how you are kind of framing architectural ideas in kind of context and philosophy. But I like that word of lens better, of where it's kind of intensifying something while framing it as well.
Yeah.
Like I think, the dihedral house on your site, I thought that was pretty strong, where, it's these axes that are built around these axes, but then with this other language of void coming in and then sort of obscuring and allowing views and transparency. And that sense of that combined with the idea of the bridge, I think is really interesting.
Well, I think the bridge, it's sort of one of those ideas that happens at a bunch of scales. The bridge is something that crosses a gap, whether it's in the house or whether it's in the landscape. But that act of bridging always, at first it infers that there's a separation. And I think the separation is also a way of articulating and explaining. So whether you're separating structure from skin or inside from out, so that bridging becomes a good verb for putting together a framework for making.
Yeah. And the bridge as not just the connector, but the measure between these things. Yeah.
And I think the lens piece, sometimes the lens is very literal in that, here we're framing the view, or in the house I'm currently in, over my shoulder behind a wall, we actually have 9 lenses in the wall that act as a camera obscura to bring daylight into a small room. So you go in there, and there's literally the projection of outside on the wall. So I think, lens is also a way of understanding. So, measuring and understanding.
How do you deal with that, especially early in a career? When you have these ideas, and it takes a special client to say yes to those ideas, or to the totality of an idea.
Sometimes you're just trying to make it rhyme early in your career.
Yeah, that's funny.
Although I think also earlier in your career, your idea rich and your editing mechanism is not quite as so honed. So you tend to put an awful lot of ideas into a project and hope that one sticks well.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing I've learned. I think I've become more confident in my ideas and knowing that, you don't need a lot of them. You really just need one.
Yeah. I always feel that way. I've got to make this project right now that I'm working on the best thing that's ever been seen in the entire world. And, someday I can just drive around it, right? Not everyone has to be great, but that idea of editing is solid.
I recently probably in the last 8 years, we suffered our first demolished project.
Oh.
It was a small house renovation that really was very heady and on a shoestring budget for a client. Little ranch house that we put 3 additions to, one wrapped in rusting steel, one wrapped in black asphalt, and the other I think was just this gray stucco volume. And then unfortunately what happened is, the land prices in Boulder appreciated so much that someone tore it down and built a big Neo something spec house in it.
Neo stucco box. Yeah.
It was easy to let go of. We have pictures.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I think the other thing that, I've carried through in the work has always been sort of that reference back to the first house in New Hampshire that, there really is a limited set of resources that we all work with. And how can we use them in a way that's durable? How can we make the buildings as energy miserly as possible? And so we're at a point now where it's great because I think probably 8 of the 10 homes we do are usually a net zero home.
Yeah. I was able, I taught with Linnea Stewart this last semester, and she and I am good friends with Miles Dake, and she brought in the drawing set for the Wild Bear Nature Center.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd been talking to Miles, who is the mechanical engineer on that as well, and seeing the kind of strategies with that project and its integration into site as well as into climate. It seems like it will be a strong project if it goes forward.
Yeah, that one feels like a maturing of all of our ideas.
Yeah.
Where we could build something that that does act as a lens and viewing point for the landscape, that does suggest referentially how that landscape's been inhabited over time. It's 8,500 square feet at about 9,000 feet in elevation, and it's going to be completely net zero in its operation. And we get to do that in a public building where people can go in and really examine it. It's not just the few people who get to see a private home. So
yeah,
that one feels good.
Yeah. So how's the firm progressed? So it was kind of the three of you, and then you got above a Porsche garage, and when clients came by, it looked like you guys were all driving Porsches, and so you had maybe 12 people there, and so where is it at now, and how's it kind of grown, and how it operates?
We are 20 people now. Our original third partner went back to teaching. Oh God, long time ago. One of my students from CU, Ken Andrews, is now our third partner. Mm-hmm. So that makes me a proud papa. I have another one of my students, Claire Jordan, who's really an integral part of our studio, and she's been with us for 13 years or so, probably 14 years. So we, at this size, it's really, we've got the office in Denver and an office in Boulder. Although we are now all separated to the four winds. And when we were in the office, the nice thing was that we could operate the studios as pretty intimate design studios, but for larger projects that we would get. We did a high school in New Jersey, corporate headquarters in Texas. We finished Pearl Zumi's corporate headquarters in East Boulder County. So it's a fair project. So it's nice to have a workforce where you can gang up enough of a team in those projects. So this has been a nice size to work from. So we can still do the intimacy of a single family home, and then about half or 40% of our work are institutional. For a while we were doing a whole run of restaurants. I was sort of early on in that transition from like 6 to 12 people. We worked with Dave Query, Big Red F Group, at Jack's restaurant. And there were times where we were designing things and we couldn't find people to build them. Like, believe it or not, we did concrete countertops. There was no one doing that. So James and I would pull all-nighters mixing concrete and making the countertops for these restaurants. Nice. We built light fixtures. It was really this ethic of making was fun. But now, we still try to keep that fabrication ethic in the studio. So, but rather than us doing it with our own hands, we're working hand in hand with a fabricator on key pieces. So things like the Sincline house, we had this idea for this experimental sink, which we CNC machined and learned a lot about how those materials respond, how to work like that. And now we're trying to take that sort of into the next step of really how much of a project can be prefabricated. So.
Mm-hmm. Has it been tough for you? The larger the firm gets, the less concrete mixing you're doing, or screwing you're doing, or not really?
Yeah, there's been no concrete mixing in 20 years, so that's a good thing.
That's good. Yeah. That's funny. What have you had, like, do you think back what your best day in architecture has been? Yeah, your the best day. Do you have
the best
a memory of that?
Wow. I've been really fortunate to have a lot of really good projects and great clients. I mean, I don't think I have one client who I wouldn't call a friend. And so completing homes and buildings in just great environments. And I think, so early on, some of the first houses, it's always great because you see your idea reified, right? Of late, I would say the best day was we recently did a corporate headquarters and manufacturing plant in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in rural Texas, and it replaced literally these leaking corrugated sheds that people were doing sort of this high precision work in. And the CEO had a big grand opening, and we've set up this building so there's all these employee-friendly amenities, gyms and cafeterias, and a space where they come on Sunday and bring their family, and there's a giant screen to watch football. And so just meeting the guys who were going in there and working for, $15 an hour, building, and saying, this is just great. No one down here does this for anyone. To be able to go to work here every day is just amazing. That was a great day. That was like, wow, we are impacting people's lives. Yeah.
Was that a project where, did you hesitate to take that? Seeing maybe an existing culture of kind of metal building and down in Texas, or was that where the client came to you and said and laid out, we want all this, or was that something you brought to it?
It's a client I knew pretty well. I had done a design of a home for that, ironically never was built. We designed the home around 5 classic pieces of American conceptual art from the 70s. But so we got along really well. I've always been interested in that place where art and architecture overlap. And I just knew he would be a great client, and he gave us a really great opportunity. So we built an award. We got AAI awards for the building. It was a good building.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So not only did he allow us to do good architecture, but we did good architecture that impacted a lot of lives, and those lives recognized it. So that was a good day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you don't get a lot of those, right? When that opening of the building or whatever, things take so long to do and to really enjoy that one day of a building opening or whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I know often there's a lot of postpartum depression, right? You spend the better part of 3 years putting something together, and then in a moment you say goodbye to it.
Yeah. And hope you get invited over for dinner to be able to see it sometime or something. And yeah,
exactly.
Like a child you send off for adoption, and
but there's again, I'm fortunate. There's been some good moments. I remember early on a client saying, we could never have conceived of anything that looked anything like this from the beginning, but it's exactly what we wanted. That was a good day.
So what's next for you guys? Do you have what are you excited about for the future, especially with Arc 11?
Well, the Wild Bear project was a really, what I see as one of those plateau projects that takes you to that next level. So it's got public impact. It has the energy piece. It's expressive. It's we're really testing the delivery method and how the building's going to be assembled. So I think seeing that completed is going to be a good one. We've somehow during COVID all of a sudden, cultivated work in all the ski areas. So starting to see what that brings. We've got our first real urban project, a 6-story townhome in New York City on the Upper East Side. So that's super exciting. Whole different building environment. And the people we get to work with there are just extraordinary. So I would say, Wright's line was, what's the best project? What's your best project, Mr. Wright? Well, the next one. There's some truth to that because you really, you're gaining information, you're gaining skill. And, I am also really proud though, like the studio we've put together. When I started teaching at CU, my class was 20% women. our studio is a majority women. And so my next project really is to bring them into, women into the leadership of the firm. I'm excited about that. It's kind of the architecture of the architecture. I think this is a really good chapter coming up.
Yeah.
And it's been, what was you're told throughout your career, oh, this is an old person's game. And so now that it's getting good, now I have to worry because does that mean I'm an old person?
Well, but most people have to kind of slug through it. You went directly to a principal of an architecture firm. You didn't do the 30 years working for somebody else. And
well, that's like like I said, there's something to being foolhardy.
Yeah.
I was really lucky. I did when I was in Denver. I did work for David Triba for a little better than a year, and there were just 5 of us in the office then.
Really?
So he gave me he gave me a long leash. We were doing Regis High School at that point. He's like, "Here's the chapel, go at it."
Yeah.
Which really pleased my Portuguese Catholic mother. So.
What did you gain from his office and from him?
From David? David had he had an extraordinary sense of rigor, and also what I realized about building a firm, because he was building a firm at that point, he was out every night of the week. Just meeting people, lectures, events. He was committed to that. And so I saw that and realized, all right, I just can't wait for the phone to ring. And spent a lot of time, cultivating clients, whether that was finding my way to sit on nonprofit boards or events, and again, sort of the architecture of the architecture.
Yeah.
And a young woman in the office who is, we talk about that development of how do you actually get work. And she said something about, well, that's just a gift you have. And I said, it's not more than, it's not any more a gift than design, your design skills. It's something you learn, you commit to in your home.
There's just more drinking involved, right? Yeah.
But I also, and that paid off. I'm looking forward now. We've got such a good body of work that I don't have to do that as much.
Yeah.
And really, can almost go back to those first years of architecture where I can just focus on the design piece, because I've got a really wonderful group of people who work with us. It's really nice to have.
Yeah. Yeah. That the real payoff. Huh?
Yeah.
And that working sort of everywhere in all different typologies, is that really kind of following the clients right now? Like those good clients you've built up, and then the good clients who are coming to you from those other projects?
Yeah, I think, it's some of that. Some of it's, just cultivating that over years. Some of it's people coming to the website and seeing it. A guy from Austin, Texas, who says, "Hey, I like your work." So we've got work from the West Coast to the East Coast right now. I think Harry actually early on said to us, "I don't understand where work comes from, but it just seems when you need it, it shows up." And there's something kind of mystical about that and a little uncanny. And he might have been right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It always seemed just when we were looking for something came in the door.
It's that thrill, being on the edge.
Yeah.
I meant to bring this up earlier, but Arc 11, where did it come from?
Oh, it's a great story.
I've heard a little bit of the story. I wanted to hear it from the real source.
Well, when we were trying to get this thing off the ground, I don't think any of the 3 of us involved at the time thought that our egos were strong enough to put our names on it. And so we we spent a day with, the Latin dictionary out for what was this, the Celtic word for a tool that was cleaving slate shingles. And I came home just exhausted and told my wife, about our day. We didn't get anywhere. And she was a very smart attorney, public defender, who, with a great sense of humor, just quoted a line from Rob Reiner's movie, This Is Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Where she said, well, how about Arc 11? It's one more than 10. And I thought, why not? Kind of sounds professional, has a little humorous story behind it, and it stuck.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
It's one more than 10.
I love it. I know it's such a hard process trying to come up with a name that isn't your name for a firm, and
it is.
It can be so laborious.
And maybe we overthink it. I think that was the lesson that I learned there. And I think that can be true in architecture as well. That sometimes we overthink these things and we think, oh, it's all going to be so serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's even in a building, and I think the good thing about architecture, I think in some ways it can be a real reflection of the human condition. It can be serious. It can be tragic. It can be a little comedic at times. And maybe the best architecture is that which takes two of those things and pushes one against the other. So it's funny that the house I'm in now is a pretty serious house. It's got these sort of, it's the grown-up version. And I told you, I promised you the story about it.
Give it.
It's the grown-up version of the house next door, which was the first house I designed for myself, which was just this, metal box with this weird folded plane out at the front. And, Harry Sink, I think, told me he built a house for $20,000 or something. I built that for $200,000, and I was on site every weekend, carpenter, pulling wire. And the house I'm in now, it's built for my now life partner, and it's a pretty grown up version of the next door, but it's serious. And there's some exterior staircases that are in it. And they were going in place one day, and she said, well, what color are they? Because the whole house is just monotone gray, zinc gray, gray wood, and black. And I said, well, they're safety yellow. And she goes, no, really, what color is it? I said, safety yellow. And sure enough, the crane shows up and drops this safety yellow exterior stair onto the roof of this house and one on the ADU. And so I think, it comes back to there should be we can have a little sense of humor about it as well. I think there can be this levity. We get really serious as architects sometimes, and I think it's important to remember that there can be a little bit of levity as well.
Yeah, as long as there's that framework there. As long as you have the black house, you can have one yellow stair. But we don't want the whole house to be crazy color.
Right.
But that's interesting. How did you get the lot right next to the house that you started with?
Well, that was a long process. The house next door, I bought that piece of property a very long time ago. And lived in a little duplex, raised my first daughter to about age 4, and moved out and remodeled. But there was this little crummy duplex next door built in the 60s. And we're in the middle of a historic downtown neighborhood in Boulder. But I was always after the landlord, who was an architect, the owner. And I said, if you ever want to sell it, give me first right of refusal. So, probably 20 years after I told him that, he called me up one day. He said, I've been trying to make a spec house work there. I can't make it work. Would you like to buy it?
He said, I have just the yellow stair for you for that lot. Let's do this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, nice.
So, we just finished this and moved in a year ago. And, it's funny going back to that postpartum piece. So used to handing the project off, and now I get to, be in it. And it's a little bit of what we my partner, she calls it the upper limit problem. It's like, you walk around, it's like, really deserve this? I do this for other people, but it's not.
That's funny.
It's an interesting it's an interesting place in life. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you just spent a lot of time you just got back from Portugal from spending a lot of time there. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been spending more and more time there. I think I've mentioned, so my mother was Portuguese, so I had this kind of interest in the homeland. So we've been going there for a couple months a year. And now that we work remotely, it's great because I don't take any guilt. I go there and I work. I'm actually more productive when I'm there than when I'm here. So, and then I've started, really, I love the work, the modern work that's been done there currently. It is just incredible. I'm a bit of a minimalist in my ethic, and boy, I have nothing on Sotomora, the Caesar disciples, and what they're doing there, the second generation that Caesar has taught. It is remarkable, and they're far more daring than perhaps we are here. It's a more forgiving climate. They have a very different labor cost, but there is just some really, really beautiful work being done there. It's modern, highly crafted, thoughtful. The energy piece is in place, both at the local level, but also at the national level. So I've been spending some time there. In fact, I'm going next week just for about 12 days.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Have to plug back in to the inspiration, to the energy, and
Well, I just have to have no distractions so I can do more focused work during the day.
That's funny.
But no, I fall into a really nice routine there. And that's the interesting thing about practicing in COVID, as we've all experienced, is that I think it's opened up opportunities. We have as a firm are more productive. Myself as a leader, I have to be much more active because there's not the serendipitous meetings in the studio anymore. So I really have to, let's schedule a meeting and check in.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting. It certainly caused some loss. And at the same time, I think with any loss in the world, there's some form of grace that comes, and you find, this is what it brings us.
I like that. Well, cool. When I started this podcast, there was like a group of people who I'd never met before, and it was kind of like, well, if this podcast has any success, I'll get one of these people on the show, and you were one of those people. So I'm thankful for you for coming on and getting to know you a little bit here and sharing your story.
I'm grateful for doing it. I was a little intimidated, like God, how can I talk about what I do for an hour? What do I do? Who am I?
Who am I?
I think coming back to that question, I used to tell young people in the studio, I said, architecture isn't something you do, it's something you are. It really, for me, it's the framework for how you see things. And maybe that's extreme. And I think sometimes millennials get a little bit, well, what does that mean about your work-life balance? And I say, well, I'm not sure that it affects the work-life balance, but I feel like, I have several relationships in life, and one of them is to work, one of them is to my family, one of them is to myself, one of them is to my romantic partner. And, but, the architecture is a lens for some of those, not all of them. But certainly, for how you interpret the world. But I thank you for the opportunity to talk about it.
No, thank you. I just that idea of lens, I love that, and of saying, I'm seeing the world and I'm seeing it through this lens, and my work is the way that I interpret that. It's not, of course it's work, but it's more of my output of how I see and how I think and how to impact surroundings and people.
I think it tests our conviction about things. And if we're going to be precise in how we put buildings together, can we be precise in our other relationships as well can be focused, give them the time they deserve. So, I think, as I was saying, I feel like one of the ethics of our work is the stewardship for resources. And that sense of stewardship is something you carry into the world in general. It's not just the architecture.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think what you should do is take all of, we were talking about culture and the architectural culture in Colorado, and it would be kind of neat to, as you cultivate this group that you've interviewed, hold them all together in some way. Because I think that is, as you've probably experienced it, my experience of the architecture culture in Colorado, it's been hard outside of the university system. And I think Harry pointed that out, and maybe one of the other people who interviewed, that was really live and fertile. And I don't necessarily find that we have it in the profession as much. There have been times in Boulder where different groups of us have tried to have rotating Friday studio conversations. And it's hard to sustain it. But thank you for doing this, because it keeps the conversations the same.
Yeah. And I hope as we go forward and COVID lessens, we'll have more live events and more happy hours and more things. But
great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Adam.
Thanks.
You can visit architecting.com, that's architect-ing.com, to see images from this week's guest.
And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have a great week and keep connecting.
Are you thinking about going back and teaching anytime? What happened there? And what?
I was 12 years, and it was hard at times. I loved it. It was super stressful sometimes, where I'd be teaching a studio in Boulder and one in Denver, running the firm.
Oh, wow.
I had a 4-year-old kid, and there was a time where all of a sudden I just realized I can't do all of this.
Yeah.
Something is suffering. And I, after 12 years, frankly, I got tired of hearing myself talk. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to focus on the studio and try to, always have someone in the studio who's associated with the university, because I think that is fertile ground. And then try to just take that ethic from the studio into how we practice. And so someone, I did get accused by a client, you guys are kind of like a little quirky academic.
Oh,
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
At the time it felt a good thing.
Yeah.
No, you realize there's only so many projects. And that's the other straight. I'm at a point now where, I'm not leaving next week, but I just watched Jeff Shepard, who's, I always saw as the generation ahead of me. I'm like, wow, it's kind of like when your parents die. It's like, oh, I'm on the front lines now. And so I think, okay, what's the transition plan? And that's why, I said I'm excited about, I've got some really talented people, and, to really be able to empower other voices that maybe aren't the majority voices. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And, be able to focus more on the design piece again, and not on the management, not on business development, not on, keeping that client happy. Just work on design.
You earned it. You got all the way here. Take advantage of it,
Yeah. It's, it's that time in life. Like, okay, this is, 30 years of putting this together. And now I'm trying, the name's escaping me, but, he had a firm in Boston. He does a lot of academic work. Did a big addition to Tanglewood. I'm trying to think of his name. But when I did that summer semester at Harvard, they took us around to these different firms, and he was probably 40 at the time with 7 people. And they showed, so we went to a bunch of firms, and any questions? And I raised my hand. Oh yeah, young man. I said, how much time do you get to design? And he said, oh, I'm lucky if I get 5 or 10% of my week as design team to time. And I brash, 23-year-old marched out of there. I'll never let that happen to me. There was some years there where I was like, I am lucky if I get 10% of my time to design in a 65-hour week. Yeah. And now I'm at a place where I have made it a point that 30% of my goal, 30% of my time is just working on that. So
nice.
It feels good.
Yeah. But I look at these guys. I was just having this conversation last night of how old is Frank Gehry right now? 97. He's in it, and I was talking about my grandmother, who's in a retirement home and barely can move around, and it's all these architects that go on forever, and you're able to again, it's not necessarily work. You do what you want to do, and you keep creating and designing, and
and I think if you get to a point where the business is rolling out of its own center, that you can do that. And there's just as many architects though who I see don't plan that, and they get into their 70s and it just sort of trickles away, or they just decide one day to shut the door because there's not enough work. And I feel really good about building something that feels like it's got some resonance to it, and it might outlast me. Yeah, and it's not even an ego fulfillment as much as got to do some cool buildings, and hopefully they last a couple hundred years. Yeah.
But that's the benefit of an idea, right? A theory, and of a firm without a name, right? You don't have to necessarily worry about that transition as much. And there's an idea that pulls people together and creating that good team, that takes those things off of you. And
But as I said to you, none of it was planned. It's kind of are you a skier?
Yeah, snowboarder. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm a telly skier, but I'm not a big bump skier, but I always say it's sort of like skiing bumps where, the terrain changes constantly and you just have to adjust. And if you have enough skills that you can adjust, it's okay. If you don't have enough skills to adjust, it can be terrifying. Yeah. And there were terrifying moments, man. There were, I got so stressed out when I was teaching and everything. I got so stressed out I could develop shingles. I mean, I had some dark moments where it was like, oh, how am I going to pay the mortgage? Oh, you make you're so terrified you're making one error that could financially sink you, So it was all my 30s. It was good to kind of get that behind me.
Yeah. All that stress while the interns are making the most amount of money in the firm, and
exactly. It was about that time too. I got this great line on this project in Snowmass for this guy we worked on the whole design. It was a 600-acre ranch, beautiful house, and we had the presentation, and he, after 2 presentations, calls me up on the phone and fires us. And I was like, oh my God. And I was so angry. I ripped the phone out of the wall. This is when phones were attached to walls. And then I found out he had fired the previous 3 architects, one of whom was the dean at Columbia. And I was like, really? Okay, it's not me. But getting that perspective, it takes some time.
Yeah. It has to happen to you a few times where that doesn't bother you as much.
Yeah. I think there's just everyone has to have those moments. I think there has to be. You have to get fired to understand. Oh, yeah, I can survive it. We've been pretty fortunate on that. I have not lost work that we've started, save for 9/11 when people called up and just like, "Hey, stop." Yeah. We went from 12 people to 3 people. in a week.
Wow.
Yeah, that was painful.
Wow.
That was maybe the most painful. I hate laying people off, firing people. That is the worst part of the business. The one, you said something about, can you, tell a story about a brush with architecture, a brush with an architect? And maybe this one's timely, because now the addition on the art museum has just been completed by Machado Savetti.
Yeah.
When I was in grad school, Rodolfo Machado was a reviewer on one of my projects, one of my semesters. It was a monastery project, right? And I got and this is the only criticism, only moment of any design review I ever remember, honestly. And I got up there and I presented my litany and my design. He just looked at me and he said, "Young man, you are like my maid. You don't do windows very well." So I'm very self-conscious about how we proportion windows, how they're placed, how they're detailed.
That's right. And you said, "You have a maid?" Yeah.
He did it in a thick Venezuelan accent, which I can't even.
That's so fitting with that addition. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys with your office right there just get to see it every day.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a great spot to have the office, and it's interesting now. We're having a lot of conversations about, how much real estate do we need? We really want to have a collaborative space, but maybe it is true collaborative space. It doesn't need to be a bunch of workstations. It needs to be a place where people can come and work together.
Yeah. Brave new world.
The Portuguese piece too. I'm trying to, one of my goals is to, start cultivating projects there. And, we've got a woman on our staff who's, she just spent the month living with her family in Madrid and working from there. So it is interesting in the opportunities again that COVID has sort of set up for everybody.
Yeah. No, that's interesting.
Are you teaching as well? And do you have a practice?
Yeah. So that's where I want you to tell me how to balance my life, how to do it.
Yeah. No, it's important and hard. And I bristle when people say, we're interviewing these, people that come into position. They say, well, what's the work-life balance like? And I go back to Douglas Darden on that, who just, his line was, nothing is balanced. There should, I'm an unreasonable man. That's what he used to say. I'm an unreasonable man. I did a bunch of drawings for his monograph, and he was unreasonable. I have drawings in there that I have, 100 and some hours in, and I come in, I'll be like, Douglas, I was hallucinating and dreamt of being inside that drawing. Oh, good. I think that's unhealthy. Honestly, it killed him.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a matter of just not balancing, but weaving those relationships. Letting the skills of what you do as an architect inform how you parent or how you partner or how you teach, and letting the skills that you have as a partner and a teacher and a parent perhaps inform how you architect.
Yeah.
Instead of separating them out,
Yeah.
But there's probably things about snowboarding that, can be applied to design.
I wouldn't know. I never have enough time to do it.
For what it's worth, I didn't for the longest time, and I think we bought, Eldora had these transferable corporate passes. And so we would buy those and then pass them around. And that actually got me out.
Oh, nice.
And you realize you're not missing anything. So are you full-time at the university, or how?
No, just adjunct visiting. So I just do kind of one semester, one class a semester, and I try to do kind of like 1 or 2 semesters on and then take 1 or 2 off. I'm I'm kind of like in my third one right now, but yeah. And then just
that's where I think the GSD does it well, in that, you know, adjuncts can only teach for one semester and need to take the following one off.
Yeah. I think that's a good. I keep trying to say no, and I'm very bad at saying no.
And, right, so that's a skill I think that you can apply, and that's a skill that I didn't hone very well in life. And I would say I should have honed better earlier. I used to take on projects thinking, oh, we can make architecture out of anything, and I should have said no to some. This caused me pain. You know? Yeah. How is the climate at the university?
I think it's great. I think it's getting better and better. You know, I think Mark Swackhammer has really brought some good things in, and I think that we're getting better lectures, I think, coming in. And you know, I was able to sit with Ken when he came and did reviews, and then go out to dinner with him afterwards. And I think it seemed like he's really seen a change in it. I've only been here teaching for 5 years or something, and I've seen a sort of gradual change. But yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it's good. I think to continue to kind of get new blood in and new ideas and will be helpful.
It seems like there's good leadership, committed leadership. So it's such, I've watched that school for so long to this. And that was the one thing when I left Seattle, I was so worried because the program was kind of in shambles at CU. And I said something to Doug Kelbaugh, who went on to become Dean of Michigan, I think. I said, hey, I'm dropping out of school. My life's in shambles, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to go, maybe I'll go to school in Denver. I said, should I be worried about it? He's like, you've got enough internal drive. It'll be okay. And I was very lucky because I came into that program and they had this dean there who was reckless. He was there for 3 years, a guy named Hamid Shavani. And he was reckless. And he was like, I am, I think he was, I'm going to let these Western cowboys know what architecture can really be. And he was, he cleaned out the studios. Everything's going to be a white desk. And he was super rigorous. And then he would bring in lecturers. Like he brought Peter Eisenman for a week. Chris, Peter Waldman. Some really good thinkers. And so but he was reckless. He was not ethical. That's a whole nother story. It doesn't necessarily justify what he did,
Yeah.
But I felt very fortunate. And, Ned Collier was one of his hires. And, Ned turned me on to, he's like, I was talking to him about the Heidegger thing. He's like, yeah, so I want you to build this thing that describes where it is. And so I took that as this real mission for years. So when I taught, my sketch problem that I would give to kids, like these were seniors at CU, I was, okay, this is a 2-week sketch problem. You're going to build a device that describes the site. And I go, well, where's the site? It's somewhere on your body. And these kids would build these amazing devices that, how this measures how far my skin pulls. This one demonstrates my lung capacity. It was fantastic.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
I'd always like to do those little, sketch problems. I did that. And then the literature part of me, I would do a lot of sort of little literary sketch problems. There's a Nathaniel Hawthorne story called Rappaccini's Daughter. And it takes place in this magical little garden. And I give the kids a story and there's pieces. There's all these characters in the story who are elements in the garden. And so I'd say, okay, I want you to build the garden and build the relationships between these characters. But just, again, 2-week sketch problem.
Yeah.
But the idea that architecture can be descriptive, can reveal relationships.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
What do you think about, I think about this a lot, of this sort of talking about Darden and like that rigor and of having a firm pressing for rigor versus sort of being flexible, and allowing for,
Well, you mean, so I think you can be flexible, but I think there's always rigor, right? So you can be flexible in the material palette, right? You can be flexible in form, but I think whatever it is you choose then still has to have rigor to how it's assembled, and how there's continuity to the idea about how those materials go together, how the thing is sited. So, for me, it's more, I get worried because, architecture in my mind has changed a lot. Maybe this is where I feel like the old fogey, but everything, seems so similar now. And part of it's economics, systematizing things. Part of it is sort of a zeitgeist of let's complete the modernist experiment, which I'm all about. I love, but I think back to that whole deconstructivist movement where there were these very varied experiments going on. Whether it was OMA versus morphosis, there was just a lot of difference. I see less and less difference, and I see more also, I think, sort of the things becoming just stylistic. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, where I get with that is just like, with anything, you can be hitting your head against the table over and over, trying to get this thing perfect and sucking in those graphite fumes or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, what you said before of like, we overthink these things and what's the one simple idea, or because I get that way of like, no, I need to get this thought right, this idea right, and just kill myself over it.
Yeah. I used to get frustrated with Douglas. He was obsessive and he was professed unreasonable. And sometimes I just wanted to tickle it. Like
you start using a pink pencil in one of his drawings, and
right. And he did have some of that, but I do think there's times when you just have to say, okay, am I rigorous enough, or have I taken this far enough, or it's I think it's the editing thing for me. It's just being a good editor. Am I editing it down to its essential? It's the Robert Venturi line, is it both and? I've been trying to have that one in my life a lot. Things can be both and. You don't have to be so binary. How's your practice?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. This is the third time I've started a firm, and I think this is a good one. I started one right when I graduated undergrad with my wife in 2008, and then we did that for 2 years. And
where was that?
That was in Wichita, Kansas. So we did a hot dog restaurant for my vegetarian uncle, and it's still probably my best built work. But it was great. And then we both went to grad school and in different places and lived around different places, and then came here. And then I tried starting it again myself and kind of just got lonely, and then worked for Open Studio for a little bit. And then now I'm with another partner, and he's in Connecticut, and a really nice balancing force to me, a very detail oriented and kind of technical guy. So, we started it maybe 6 months ago. And we got a house under construction in Gypsum and a pool house in Kansas, and we're working on a house in the Hamptons right now. And it's going pretty well.
It's good to have a partner you can bounce ideas off. I worked alone for a while, and I got tired of asking my cat for a crit.
Yeah.
It's important. Yeah, this was my second, my first firm. It's very brief, called Praxis Design.
Got the Latin dictionary out.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. But yeah, it took, I think it took a good, real 5 or 6 years to really get it to feel sustainable. For me to calm down enough. But that was such a different environment. I mean, Colorado, there was nothing going on in the early 90s in Colorado. It was just dead. And the design literacy was horrible. We would do things and people were just like, you're out of your mind,
Yeah.
I've been really lucky to go back and remodel 2 of my houses 3 times for different owners. And that's been really good because, you were saying, the hot dog stand, there's glints of real genius in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you got to remind yourself of that. And at the same time, like some of the houses I did, it was like too many moments of that genius, It's like, let me just edit this down and quiet it down. So, but I think it's always,
does too much genius equal genius. Yeah.
But I think, being able to reconnect to that. I do that sometimes with a couple of school projects I look at. I'm like, that was good, and it just clarifies an idea for me again. And we've done that. We have these happy hours at work every Thursday. We all get on and different theme. And so one happy hour, I asked everyone, hey, present a project in school. And everyone's, there was a lot of people who confessed, why'd you pick that? I picked that because this was when I was at my best, Well, what about that? Can you bring up to your present life?
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. That's what I sort of get worried about with my own practice of, you have to compromise a lot with clients and with projects, and it's like making sure you don't lose yourself, right?
Right.
That you're able to bring it back up.
Yep.
To your ideas when you get the right chance. But
because some clients will just exhaust you.
Yeah.
They're like the Dementors in Harry Potter or something.
They just suck it out of you.
Suck all the life out.
Yeah.
I've been, again, I'm late to saying no because I always, I can make that architecture, or God, I got to pay the mortgage. And it's really just been the last 5 years, honestly. I had a woman in Denver, an $8 million house, and I had 3 interviews with her. I'm like, no, this is not a good fit. She had all the means in the world, and it was going to be driving me crazy. Again, thanks for the opportunity. I look forward to seeing you in person sometime.
Yeah, let's grab a drink sometime.
All right.
That'd be great.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thanks.